Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. In some of my recent videos on buying a home under $500,000 in the GTA, some of you guys asked me what is actually the minimum down payment that you have to prepare when you want to buy a home. So I thought that I'd just make a dedicated video to discuss this. And the title of this video is what down payment should you prepare to buy a home in Canada? But obviously, of course, no, there is no should. But of course, there are a set of guidelines. There is a minimum amount, a minimum percentage of down payment that you will need to prepare based on the purchase price of your home. And I'll also talk about some reasons to go for a higher down payment versus a lower down payment. Just a disclaimer up front, guys, I am not a financial advisor. I am not a real estate agent. I'm just trying to share my experience and knowledge here. So always make sure that you do your own due diligence before making any financial decision. So as most of you guys know, I and my husband, we recently, a few months ago, bought a condo in the GTA, which is a studio in the high 400s. And in the very beginning of our journey, when we were looking for homes and we were applying for a mortgage, one of the first questions that we had was, what is the minimum down payment? And even if there is a minimum, should we go with a minimum or should we go with a higher down payment, and so on? So to answer this first question, let me just walk you through this website here on canada.ca. And let's go to the section, what is the minimum down payment? So the minimum down payment will depend on the purchase price of your home. So there are different brackets here. If the price of the home you want to purchase is $500,000 or less, as it was in our case, then the minimum amount of down payment is 5% of the purchase price. But there are exceptions where the minimum can actually be higher. So I will talk about that in a bit. The next bracket is $500,000 to $999,999, and here 5% will apply on the first $500,000 of the purchase price, and then 10% on the purchase price above $500,000. So let's look at a very simple example here. Let's say that the purchase price of your home is $600,000. So you apply 5% on the first $500,000, which is $25,000, and then there's a remaining $100,000, right? So to that, you need to apply 10%. So 10% times $100,000 is $10,000. You add both amounts together, $10,000 plus $25,000, which gives you $35,000. Now, what if, just what if the home that you're purchasing costs $1 million or more? Let's say $1.5 million. In that case, there's a minimum 20% down payment required on the full amount. So 20% on $1.5 million, for example, is $300,000. Now, let's briefly talk about the exceptions. So this table here above assumes that you are employed, but if you are self-employed, then your lender may require a larger down payment. So this actually applied to us. Both I and my husband, we were co-applicants when purchasing our home, and he was employed, but I was self-employed, and I still am. And because of that, our lender required us to come up with a down payment of about 7 point something percent. And there's also another case where a higher minimum down payment will apply, and that is if you have a poor credit history. If you have a poor credit history, then of course it's a higher risk to the bank, and naturally they will want you to prepare a higher down payment. It's so important that before purchasing a home, you build up that credit score and credit history. And if you want to know how you can do that or how I did it, then you can check out this video up here. Also very important, guys, this table with down payment percentages applies only to properties that are owner occupied. But in case you're buying a rental property and you are not living in that property, then a minimum of 20% down is mandatory. I guess that most of you watching now are looking for a home to live in it yourself, but who knows, just in case down the road you might want to invest in a second property and rent that out, then you'll know that you'll need 20% down. Okay guys, now that we know what the minimum down payment is required, the question is, should you stick to that minimum down payment, just prepare that bare minimum 5%, or should you go for a higher down payment, let's say 8%, 15%, or even 20%? How do you decide, or what considerations do you need to make? Obviously, guys, there are a lot of good reasons to go for a larger down payment, let's say 20%. But it's actually not that straightforward because it also depends on your current financial situation and your financial goals. But let's just start with some considerations for why you should go for a larger down payment. There are two main reasons cited on remax.ca, advantages of putting 20% down on your home. And number one is lower mortgage rates. And this has to do with what's called LTV, or your loan to value ratio. So your loan to value ratio is, like it says, the ratio of your loan, so the amount that you owe, to the value of your property. So the lower your down payment is, the higher your loan to value ratio. And the higher the loan to value ratio is, the more risk the bank is taking on, and that is why they naturally want to charge you a higher interest rate. If you go out there and apply for a mortgage, best you work with a mortgage broker, in my opinion. You can ask them and see how different down payment percentages will affect the interest rate that you can get. Consideration number two to go for a higher down payment of 20%, let's say, is that it leaves you with a smaller mortgage loan balance. And from that also follows, of course, that your monthly mortgage payments will also be lower, and it is less of a burden to you. And I would say that there's also a psychological aspect to it. Of course, with 20% in your home, you have a lot more equity, and somehow it gives you more of a peace of mind knowing that 20% of that home is already yours and you're not owing as much to the bank. You're only owing 80%. There's also a third reason. The higher your down payment, the lower the total cost of your mortgage is over its lifetime. So this is what I mean. Let's go back to the Canada.ca website. And here is a table that shows you how your down payment, the down payment percentage, affects the total cost of your mortgage. So if you're buying a home that costs $500,000, of course, it doesn't actually just cost $500,000. If you add the interest to it and possibly insurance, then over, let's say, 20 years or 25 years, it costs much, much more than that. So let's look at an example here and see how different down payment percentages will affect that cost. Let's say you buy a home that costs $400,000. Let's assume the interest rate is 4%, the amortization period is 25 years, payment frequency is monthly, and there are mortgage loan insurance premiums. So if your down payment is 5% on $400,000, your down payment amount is $20,000, your mortgage is $380,000. Because your down payment is below 20%, mortgage insurance applies, and it comes down to $15,200. This is calculated as a percentage on your mortgage amount. So in total, your mortgage is $395,200. So if you apply interest to it over the course of the 25 years, that will amount to $643,649. So that is actually the total cost of your home. Now, what about if your down payment is 10%? That means that the down payment amount is $40,000, which leaves you with a mortgage of $360,000, and a mortgage insurance of $11,160 will apply, so lower because your mortgage amount is lower. So your total mortgage will be $371,160. Apply interest to that, and you get to $625,712, which is approximately $18,000 less. Now, what about if you go for a 20% down payment? In that case, the down payment amount is $80,000 and your mortgage is $320,000. And good news, because your down payment is 20%, mortgage loan insurance premium is not necessary, so zero. So your mortgage is still $320,000. Apply interest to that and you get to $584,979. And this is quite a big difference. To the first example, it's almost $60,000. So an increase of down payment from 5% to 20% results in a, let's say, total savings over the lifetime of the mortgage of $60,000. So these are all very good reasons to opt for a higher down payment. And if you have a ton of money laying around, then sure, why not? Then go for it. But I would say that going for a higher down payment, let's say 20%, is not always the best solution for everyone. So everyone's situation, financial situation is different. So you will really need to judge for yourself. But I will be walking you through some other reasons why you might want to consider sticking to a lower down payment. So you might have noticed that in this video, my setup is a bit different. So what I noticed was that for some types of videos, such as this one, it is more efficient if I talk to you while recording my screen at the same time. It's much more efficient in terms kinds of editing, and that is why I love using this laptop stand over here. It's super practical and useful, and it's foldable. I got this on Amazon a while ago, and best thing of all, it only cost $13. So if you want to get one of these for yourself, then you can do that by clicking on my affiliate link in the descriptions down below. Okay, now let's look at some considerations why you might go for a lower down payment. On this website here, the first reason cited is it allows buyers to purchase a home. Duh. Yeah, I guess the point here is that it allows buyers to purchase a home earlier rather than later. But now, is it important to buy a home earlier? Is it better to buy a home earlier rather than wait a few more years and get a larger down payment together? I would say that it really depends on the opportunities out there in the market. It depends on your expectations about where the real estate market will go, or whether or not you think that a specific property or a specific unit in some condo will go up or not. Of course, you could say that if you choose a lower down payment, let's say 5%, that will result in a total higher cost. But in some cases, and I really stress some cases, that higher cost can be compensated by an appreciation in the value of the property. And really, again, I stress here in some cases because it is not a given that all property prices always go up. Some remain stagnant. If you choose the wrong property or something's going on in the economy, it can go stagnant or it can even go down for a while. And that is why it also depends on your risk tolerance. And of course, it also depends on what specific opportunities are out there. If you happen to come across a property that sells, let's say 10% below market value, then I would say that is a very, very good deal. Personally, in our case, we believe that it was better for us to buy a property earlier rather than, let's say, wait 2 to 3 years. But I'll get into more detail about that later. Okay, another reason cited here is that going for a lower down payment doesn't drain a buyer's saving account. And this is also something not to underestimate. When you buy a home, you want to make sure that you do not spend all the money that you have, every single penny on your home. You want to make sure that you have enough money left in your emergency fund, in your retirement fund, and also to invest. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So in our case, yes, we had an emergency fund, and we also had funds invested in the stock market, in our RSP, and in our TFSA. And if we wanted, we could just withdraw more money so that we could come up with a 20% down payment. But we consciously decided not to do it. We didn't want to withdraw too much money from our investment accounts. We wanted to stay invested in the stock market, especially with the S&P 500 growing at around 50% or so over the last 5 years. So we didn't want to lose out on that growth. And also during the time that we were saving towards our down payment, we wanted to make sure that we do not just save towards our down payment of our home, but also towards our retirement savings. Okay, here's another thing to consider when thinking about what down payment to go for, which is what the current rent is. In Toronto, a studio apartment can easily go for $1,800 and a nicer one in a nicer area for $2,200. And if we're talking about a one-bedroom apartment, you'll easily pay anything from $2,500 to even $3,000. Our mortgage is almost $2,700, and of course there are additional costs. It's not just that, but I would say that the numbers are pretty close to one another and pretty comparable. And that is why we decided, okay, why not just buy a bit earlier with a lower down payment? It would have been a totally different story if we had decided to just stay at our studio apartment back then, which at that time only cost us $1,200 per month. If that had been our strategy, we could just stay there for the next 3 years and accumulate a higher down payment. But at that time, that was simply not an option anymore for us. The place was simply too small for us and too old, and we desperately wanted to move to something a bit brighter and larger and more comfortable. Okay, the fourth thing to consider when thinking about what down payment you want to prepare for is the interest rate environment. So earlier this year, we knew that interest rates are going to go up. And because of that, we wanted to quickly secure a rate at the time. So at that time, a few months ago, we got an interest rate of 4.64%, which is still awfully high compared to what we had, let's say 5 years earlier. But compared to what interest rates are now, that was a pretty good deal for us. The tricky thing about interest interest rates is that you can never know for sure where it will go. And you could argue that if interest rates at the moment were, let's just pick a ridiculously high number, let's say 8%, then it would make more sense to just hold off and just take the time to accumulate a larger down payment instead of going ahead and paying that ridiculous interest. But on the other hand, you could argue if interest rates were only 3% or even 2% like back then, it makes sense to purchase a home much earlier, even with a smaller down payment or a minimum down payment, because it simply costs less to borrow money. So this was our biggest reason why we were okay to just stick with the minimum down payment. So at that time, our goal was to move to a larger place. By larger, I mean moving from an about 320 square foot studio to what is now, let's say 420-ish square feet studio in a nicer and newer building. So when we did our research and looked for possible units, we found that those kinds of units were rented for about $2,200. And we really didn't want to pay that kind of rent. So we decided to just purchase our own place. And yes, we did go with a lower down payment so that at the same time, while investing in a home, we could also still stay invested in the stock market, so we wouldn't pull out too much money from it and also leave our savings intact. So guys, I hope this video was useful to you. Please leave your questions and also your thoughts in the comments down below. I would really love to hear from you, where you're at in your process, what your considerations are. Are you going for a lower down payment or taking more time and saving up for a higher down payment? As always, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye.